Hello everybody, it's Katie here from the Queen of Teen Fiction. I am dressed all in black, I am wearing my rune necklace, and I have my copy of this glorious book in my hands, which obviously means it's time to talk all things Lady Midnight. So this book is out there in the world now, and it is no secret to anyone who watches videos on this channel that I am a huge fan of Cassandra Clare's books. So yeah, I was very excited to read this. So I was lucky enough to win a copy of this book before the release day from the wonderful Amber at the My Long bookshelf. I got it about 5 days before the release day, so I'd read it by the time it was released. So now that it is out there, I have been dying to discuss this book, literally dying inside. So what I'm going to do for those of you who haven't yet finished reading the book, I'm going to do a super quick summary, and then for those of you who have read the book, I'm going to jump straight in with everything because I need to discuss it so much. I have feelings, guys. I have lots and lots of feelings. So on to a summary of this book. It is set 5 years after the Dark War that took place in the Mortal Instruments, so we're still seeing a little bit of the fallout from that. We're seeing how the Shadow World has progressed from that point. Emma Carstairs, who we met in City of Heavenly Fire, is still trying to discover the truth about her parents' murder. Her parents were both killed in City of Heavenly Fire, and it was assumed that Sebastian Morgenstern was responsible because he was doing a lot of killing at that time. However, Emma doesn't believe that. Now 5 years later, victims are starting to show up in the same state that Emma's parents were in when they were found. And so Emma and the Blackthorns end up making a bargain to investigate these murders and discover who the killer is. So that's basically a very quick summary of what happens in this book. Obviously, I don't want to go into too much detail if you haven't read it. What I will tell you is that I absolutely adored this book. In terms of first books, when it comes to Cassie's other two series, The Mortal Instruments and The Infernal Devices, I prefer Lady Midnight to City of Bones and Clockwork Angel, just because this is a bigger book, so you get to know more about each of the characters. There's a lot more going on, and personally I found there were a lot more twists in this book. So it's a very strong start to this new trilogy. The characters in this book are so well written. I can't even begin to describe how much I loved the variety of characters that we got to meet. And also, even though it's set in the Shadow World, nothing feels repetitive. So yeah, I love this book. That's about all I can tell you in this spoiler-free zone. Just go and read it. Go and read it. So for those of you who haven't read the book yet, this is where we must say goodbye. I did, however, write a spoiler-free review on my blog, which I will leave a link to in the description. But anyway, for those of you who haven't read the book, bye-bye! Hello, Lady Midnight readers. So I am now assuming that everybody here has read the book. If you haven't, then don't say I did not warn you. Okay guys, so you may notice the video change visually just slightly because I had to film this video twice. Basically, the first time I filmed it, I went back to edit it the next day and discovered that some of the video had just completely blurred. So I'm having to film some of this again. Curse you, camera. Okay, so first things first. Let's talk about how this discussion is going to go down. I know most people, when they do discussions, they will go through the book bit by bit and discuss each of it. But that's not going to happen here. If you expected some sort of composed and structured review, you're not going to find it here, because I'm a mess. I'm a mess. Although I'm uploading this video at a later date so that more people have had a chance to finish reading the book, the day of filming this video is actually the 8th of March, so it is the release day of Lady Midnight. I just finished reading the book yesterday. I haven't had time to collect my thoughts, so forgive my mess of a discussion. I never claimed to be a professional. So instead, what I'm going to do is go through the characters and discuss each of the characters, and then after that I will go back and discuss plot points that I missed out when discussing the characters. So at the start of the book there are two characters in the prologue called Kit and Johnny Rook. However, I'm not going to start by discussing them because I want to talk about them later with regards to the end of the book. So instead I'm going to start with our protagonist, Emma Carstairs, and her parabatai, Julian Blackthorn. If you'd have told me back when I was reading City of Heavenly Fire that I was going to end up preferring Emma Carstairs to Clary, I'd have shook my head. I'd have laughed you off. But that's the truth. I adore Emma so much. She is such a fantastic character. She is very much a female Jace. She has his wit and sarcasm, and she also has the same kind of courage and warrior determination that he does. And I love that because this time she's a female character. So she's a badass female warrior shadow hunter. Now, her parabatai and best friend in the whole world is Julian Blackthorn. He is part of this huge Blackthorn family consisting of a lot of siblings. Julian and Emma agreed to become parabatai so that Emma would be able to stay at the LA Institute with the Blackthorn family. This is a decision they made when they were 12, and it's one that Julian ends up highly regretting because, of course, as we know from the other Shadowhunter books, it is illegal in Shadowhunter law to be in love with your parabatai, and Julian is in love with Emma. He made the decision to become her parabatai because he couldn't bear to be away from her, but obviously that's having a major effect on him now because he can't love her the way he wants to. So I knew before reading Lady Midnight that this was going to be based around a relationship that focused on parabatai, and I was really excited to read that because that is a relationship that we haven't really looked into in the Shadowhunter books. We touched upon it with Alec and Jace, but obviously it never progressed. So in this series we actually get to focus on that now, and we're getting to learn so much more about parabatai, and it's so different and exciting, but it's also the most heartbreaking romantic relationship. My heart ached for Julian and Emma throughout this book. I think it's pretty clear from the start that Julian's in love with Emma, but Emma doesn't realise it until the book progresses. When she does realise it and they discover that they're both in love with each other, those scenes, those emotional scenes. There are tense moments when they almost get caught out as well. It's such a horrible situation to be in. The ending of Lady Midnight for these two characters, that's heartbreaking. I'll talk about that later because I want to talk about the ending separately. But yeah, just in general, I love the bond between Julian and Emma. Also, they have some pretty hot scenes. That beach scene, wow, okay. I'm liking the way this relationship progresses. It doesn't feel like a relationship that's progressed too quickly because they've known each other since they were kids. I think in the Mortal Instruments and in the Infernal Devices, Cassie had to take her time building up the relationships between the characters, building up so much towards one first kiss. Whereas with Julian and Emma, because there's so much history between them, when you do finally get to that scene where they kiss, it goes a lot further than kissing because they have that connection already there. And I liked reading that scene. Also, the tension between them throughout that book, you literally just want them to kiss all the way through it. So one of my favourite scenes between Julian and Emma was the scene where they dance at the theatre, and that scene is just really great because that's the first time that both of the characters completely let their guard down in front of each other. And Julian's been hiding his feelings for Emma throughout this whole book, and then we just get that one scene where everything drops down, and I loved it. So together they are amazing characters, but they're also fantastic apart as well. Like, in their own rights, they are utterly strong characters. Okay, so let's just talk about Julian for a little second because already I know Julian is going to completely break my heart. His story is so sad. Obviously in City of Heavenly Fire he had to kill his own father because he'd been turned by Sebastian. In Lady Midnight we learn that the Blackthorn's uncle Arthur came over to stay with them in the Institute. Julian thought he'd be able to look after the younger siblings, look after the Institute, but obviously Arthur has a lot of problems and Julian won't tell anyone about it because he knows that if the Clay finds out about Arthur's health, then they won't let him run the Institute. So Julian hides everything and takes on all of this responsibility by himself. So not only is he looking after his younger siblings, being like a father to them, he's also single-handedly running the Institute and has been doing so since his early teens. And that's just so heartbreaking. Okay, so I'm going to move on to Mark Blackthorn. Now, when these characters were introduced in City of Heavenly Fire, Mark's was the story that intrigued me the most because at the age of 16 he was taken by the Wild Hunt, and so I knew that at some point in Lady Midnight we'd be getting his character back. However, I predicted it would be the second half of the book. I didn't expect within the first few chapters to have Mark Blackthorn back, but I was really happy because I was so excited to learn more about him and learn more about the Wild Hunt. And so Mark gets returned to the Institute by two fae called Kieran and Ilarth. I think it's Ilarth. That's how I read it in my head anyway. He looks like a tree. The fact that he looks like a tree though, Every time they mentioned him, I thought of Groot. The other Fae, Kieran, I will talk more about in a minute. They make a bargain with Emma and Julian because some of these murder victims that are showing up are Fae. If Emma and the Blackthorns manage to investigate this murder and figure out who's doing the killings, then Mark will be allowed to stay with his family if he chooses. So Mark gets dropped off at the Institute. I absolutely adored everything about Mark's story. I loved seeing his adjustment to being back in the human world. Those first few scenes where he's just at war with everyone, they were really heartbreaking. He didn't recognise his own siblings. It was also really funny at times as well, especially when he's in the cafe and he orders strawberries. And the scene when he's left in charge of the younger Blackthorns. Julian and Emma come home to find Tavi and a bag of sugar. Bless Mark Blackthorn's little heart. But when he does end up back in the Institute at first and he's finding it difficult, one of the few people that he trusts is Christina. Christina is another shadow hunter. She is from Mexico, but she is travelling and spending a year at the LA Institute. She's had her own drama going on back at home that we don't find out about until much later in the book. We hear all about this perfect Diego that she had back home and his brother Jamie. But before all that, Christina and Mark have a few moments. Christina basically says from the start that one of the main reasons she came to the LA Institute was because of Mark, because she is fully against the cold piece and how shadow hunters are treating the Fae. So pretty much from the start I kind of figured that they were going to put some sort of romantic tension between Mark and Christina, and then we had a scene where she was cutting his hair and that pretty much confirmed that there was going to be something there. So from then on I thought, oh, we're setting up this romantic relationship pretty soon on. And then we get the ending of chapter 12. Kieran, our little fairy prince, shows up again in chapter 12. And what do you know? Him and Mark are kissing against a tree. Okay! So Christina is watching this interaction, this steamy interaction, between Mark and Kieran. And there is a lot of emotion there in that scene and between these two characters that I was not expecting whatsoever. When I was looking online after I'd read the book, apparently some people were aware that Mark had had a lover whilst he was in the hunt. I didn't know this, so that scene was a complete surprise to me. And it was a welcome surprise, because that kiss between them was written so brilliantly. You could tell that there was history between these two characters. And then straight after that chapter, we get a little flashback chapter, which is entitled The Wild Hunt. And the minute I saw it was called The Wild Hunt, I was like, here we go, we're going to get Mark and Kieran's backstory. Strap yourself in because this one's going to be a roller coaster of feels. That chapter was really great because I'd assumed that Mark's entire time at the Wild Hunt had been unpleasant, and whilst some of it had been, we know that he was physically beaten by Fae in the hunt. He has scars on his back from it. However, I didn't expect him to have had someone he formed a relationship with, and straight away I knew that could be something that threatened to tear Mark away from his family again, because whilst his siblings all assume he's going to choose staying with them, now we know he has somebody back in the hunt. So that chapter where we see how Kieran and Mark met and how they formed this relationship, I adored everything about it, and it was written so well. From reading that, I knew this was a relationship that wasn't going to end well. Because we were getting this backstory, I knew it was doomed further down the line in this book. It didn't stop me from shipping it though, did it? I mean, come on. You can't give me these two characters and this cute backstory and expect me not to ship it. But I still knew Mark had something going on with Christina as well. I knew that was going to cause drama. So even though we know that Mark and Kieran are together, Mark is still having feelings for Christina that he's a little bit confused about. But however, like I said, I pretty much knew that Mark and Kieran were doomed. There is a scene in the book when Christina, Mark, Emma and Julian go to this lost theatre. Kieran shows up at the theatre and him and Mark have another extremely hot make-out scene in the closet, which I appreciated. I mean, just reading that though, you know then that they are completely doomed, because when they're kissing, Mark isn't really thinking about Kieran, he's thinking about the hunt. Being with Kieran reminds him of being in the Wild Hunt, and I felt like he had more desire for that than for the boy in front of him. So any hope that I had for them pretty much vanished at that scene. And then Mark ends up bonding more with Christina, and Kieran ends up seeing them talking through a window. Kieran goes and tells the leader of the Wild Hunt, Gwyn, what he saw Mark talking about. Mark isn't allowed to say anything about his time in the hunt. Mark accidentally tells something to Christina without thinking. Kieran spills the beans, and then chapter 22 happens. Chapter 22 literally ripped my heart out. It was torturous to read. Quite literally. Kieran shows up with Ioleth and the leader of the hunt, Gwyn, to punish Mark. Kieran assumes that they're going to take Mark back and force him into the Wild Hunt so Kieran can be with him again. It's not how it goes down. Nope. Instead, the punishment is 20 whippings of Mark. Kieran realises what an utter mistake he has made, and shit goes down. And it is one of the most heartbreaking chapters in that book. Oh my goodness, I was reading it at about 1:30 in the morning and I was fighting back tears. Obviously, Julian doesn't want to watch his brother get whipped because his brother has been through so much. So Julian offers to take his place. Watching him get whipped tears Emma apart, so she knocks him out, takes his place and gets whipped instead. Every single moment of that chapter was just pain. And the Kieran and Mark side of it just, oh no, Kieran, what have you done? And I knew from that point on, Mark's never going to forgive him. So yeah, there goes my ship, just sinking down to the bottom of the ocean. Just bye-bye. They were so cute, and it's never gonna happen because Kieran was so stupid. So whilst we're on the subject of Mark and Kieran, I want to talk a little bit more about Kieran because he is a character that we don't see much of in this book, but I find him really intriguing. This definitely isn't the last we've seen of him in this trilogy. Even though Mark says he's not going to see him again, we are going to see Kieran again. Kieran is a Fae Prince. He is the son of the Unseelie King, so there's definitely more to learn about his story, I think. However, he has already fucked up big time. And I know this is only book 1, there's a lot more of this story to go, but already I have theories about Kieran's story. Specifically, how Kieran's story will end, because I think he is a doomed character. He has tragic written all over him. Mark has said that he will never forgive Kieran for what he's done, but I don't think that will stop Kieran from trying. Honestly, when I read that conversation between them at the very end of the book, after Kieran had helped them with Malcolm, I just couldn't help but wonder if Kieran would be able to get some sort of redemption further on in this trilogy. And I honestly think that he might end up dying trying to save Christina, Emma, or one of the Blackthorn siblings. Especially with Christina and Emma. Christina because he was jealous of her and that's what caused all this drama in the first place, and Emma because she is the one that ended up taking the whippings in the end. And I think doing that will be his redemption, kind of. I know this is very early days here, but this is book 1 and I'm talking about something that could happen in the final book, but straight away that is what I thought of. In fact, I thought it was going to happen in Lady Midnight when he came to help them at the end. I honestly thought he's going to die trying to save somebody. So yeah, I'm just putting that out there now, just in case I am right. I don't want to be right because, unfortunately, I like Kieran. I like tragic characters that fuck up. I always have done, so straight away I'm getting slightly emotionally attached to Kieran, but I think his story is going to end in tragedy. Let's move on to the other Blackthorns. We have Tiberius and Livy. We have Drusilla, who is 13, Tavi, who is the baby of the group. Obviously we have Helen Blackthorn as well, who we've met before, but she is not in this book. She is still exiled on Wrangel Island. But the other 4 Blackthorn siblings are living at the LA Institute under Julian's care. So Tiberius and Livy, I really love these 2 characters. I love Tiberius a lot because I know Cassie has said that he is autistic, and I absolutely adore that because it is not often in a fantasy book that you get an autistic character. He's a great character and I think he's got a lot more to offer in this series. I think Livy is also great. She's quite fun and upbeat all the time. I feel like we didn't really get to know Drusilla that much. Obviously, I think we'll get to know her a lot better in the coming books. I liked how the younger siblings reacted to Mark being back in the family as well. There were some really interesting scenes there. And I like Tiberius's bond with Mark as well. So yeah, I really love the Blackthorn family and I'm so excited to hear more from them in the future. Other characters we have are Diana. She is a tutor in the Institute, but she wouldn't agree to run the Institute for them. There is definitely more to her story. She is hiding something from the Clave. I am thinking that maybe she is part of a group that are trying to overthrow the Clave. That is my personal theory, but I honestly think she's part of something a lot bigger. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a character that ruined me. I want to talk about Malcolm Fade. You don't even want to get me started on Malcolm Fade, okay? Okay, Malcolm. I have so many issues with Malcolm Fade. Malcolm Fade is the High Warlock of LA. We first met him in City of Heavenly Fire. In that book, he is a clumsy, bumbling character that's very childlike, and I adored him. I loved him so much when he was introduced. I was so happy that we were going to get another Warlock. I was led to believe he was going to be kind of like another Magnus type character. He was going to be a trusted Warlock that the characters could go to if they needed help. And he was that throughout the majority of Lady Midnight. I completely believed it. This is just a complete credit to how good of a writer Cassandra Clare is. She completely fooled me. She had me sold. I honestly believed that Malcolm Fade was everything that was good in this world. He's always helping the Blackthorns. He actually spends time watching romantic comedies with them and crying about love. I thought he was the sweetest. I was so wrong. Not until Emma explicitly said, "The Guardian is Malcolm," did I predict at all that it was Malcolm. It broke me. It broke me. Even when Emma said, "It's Malcolm," I was like, no, honey, you are wrong. I didn't suspect a thing. However, I absolutely adore that twist. I adore his story. His relationship with this Blackthorn, Annabelle. It was funny as well because as I was reading the book, I was talking on Tumblr about how much I loved Malcolm, and I was just like, oh, I love Malcolm so much. I feel so betrayed. How could Malcolm be such a little shit? Okay, so they were the main characters that I wanted to talk about and their storylines. Now I just want to take a moment to talk about the ending. After you get those scenes with Malcolm, and Malcolm has died, at least I hope he's dead, but you notice that there is quite a big chunk of the book left. Oh god, what's gonna happen now? Please, no more, I can't take it. But those final few chapters were packed full of little surprises. What I want to talk about the most is Kit and Johnny Rook. I mentioned before that the prologue starts with Kit on the shadow market. He has the sight and so does his father. I knew there was going to be more to their story because the prologue wouldn't have opened up with Kit if there wasn't going to be more of a story there. We do see Kit again in the book when Julian and Emma go to Johnny Rook for more information. Kit is hiding in the basement. Tiberius has snuck out with Julian and Emma because he's sick of being left at the Institute and not being allowed to get involved. So he snuck out. He ends up in the basement holding a knife to Kit's throat. A scene that I completely adore, by the way. There is a moment, I think, between Kit and Ty. I think that scene is a very important meeting scene. And I knew reading that this definitely wasn't going to be the last we saw of Kit, because I have a feeling that their relationship is going to develop a lot over the course of this series. So I wasn't surprised when one of the final few chapters mentioned Kit and Johnny again. Johnny gets killed by demons after Malcolm dies because the protection Malcolm has put on his house dies with Malcolm. Kit sends a text to Emma for help. Emma turns up with Tessa and Jem. The reason why they were there, helping Emma with Kit, is because Kit is not Kit Rook at all. Kit is Christopher Herondale. He's a Herondale. Okay. I knew there was going to be more to Kit and Johnny, but I didn't expect them to be Herondales. So Kit doesn't just have the sight, he's a shadow hunter. He's a descendant of Tobias Herondale, a character that has been mentioned in Cassie's short stories that she does outside of her main series. So there is a lot more to his story that we're going to learn. He is taken by Emma, Tessa and Jem to the LA Institute, and the suspicions I had about there being more to Kit and Ty's relationship was a little bit more confirmed at those end scenes, because coincidentally Ty is the first person that Kit literally bumps into when he opens the door to the Institute. When he locks himself in one of the bedrooms, Ty is sitting outside reading. So yeah, I had little suspicions that that was going to be a thing, and I definitely think it after that ending. I am very excited about Christopher Herondale. I'm excited to see what happens between him and Ty because it's gonna be a thing. Kit thought he was beautiful when he first saw him. It's gotta be a thing. It's gotta. With Jem and Tessa being at the Institute after that, Jem and Emma have a conversation. We finally find out from Jem what it is that makes parabatai love so forbidden. And it is that it creates stronger power than they expected. This is something we saw hints of throughout the book when Emma and Julian were healing each other. Runes that shouldn't have worked actually saved their lives. Jem reveals to Emma that parabatai, who fall mutually in love with each other, can end up growing mad with power and killing family members, stuff like that, you know, all good things. So after that, Emma decides that her and Julian absolutely cannot be together, and so she ends up telling Julian that she's not in love with him that way and that they can't be together. My little heart broke with every word she said because poor Julian. There's so much heartbreak in the future of this series. Emma decides that the only way she'll get Julian to stop loving her is if her and Mark are a thing, because Julian said to her that if she was to be with Mark, it was something that he couldn't come back from. She brings Mark in just at the end of the book and asks him to pretend to be dating her. When I was about halfway through Lady Midnight and I was looking at other people's theories online, a lot of people expected a love triangle between Mark, Emma and Julian. When I was halfway through the book, I thought it was pretty clear that that wasn't going to happen because I thought it'd be Mark, Kieran and Christina in a little love triangle. And I actually wrote down here in my notes, people thought that the love triangle would be between Mark, Emma and Julian. Ha ha. Ha ha. Ha ha. I'm not laughing now, am I? That final line. He held out a hand to her, half beckoning, half offering. Why lie? So why pretend to be in a relationship when we actually can be? Mark, sweetheart, just sit down for a second and collect your thoughts. Be alone for a little while, Mark. Be alone. Don't jump into a relationship with Emma. Emma and Mark could be a thing in the next book. Not sure if I want that. Julian and Mark, their relationship has been through so much already as brothers. Okay, they've been apart for so long. They've just built their relationship back up again. And now Emma and Mark, the wedge that is going to drive between Julian and Mark. No. No. There is going to be so much angst in the future of this series. There is a lot more to discuss in the ending of the book, but I only have so much time here. What I want to do before I wrap up this discussion is mention the ties to the Mortal Instruments. I expected to see the Mortal Instruments characters in this book. It's set in the same world, it's 5 years later. I knew they were going to appear. It was weird at first when people were mentioning them as like heroes. It was weird, but it was great. Very glad that we got a couple of scenes with Magnus as well, because you know how much I love Magnus. But then after Lady Midnight, there is a short story that features the characters from the Mortal Instruments. And I loved the short story just as much as I loved Lady Midnight, because it's about Simon and Isabel's engagement party. The Sizzy are engaged, you guys. They're engaged. Everything's so happy. It's fluffy and cute. Magnus and Alec have kids. Izzy and Simon are so happy. Clary and Jace are still so much in love. It's just... However, there was one little thing. Jace proposes to Clary and then they get interrupted before she has a chance to give her answer. The final paragraph of that story is her thinking about how she will have to give him an answer when they get back and that she dreaded it. That made me a little worried. Maybe she doesn't want to get married. Please let us not have some angst between Clary and Jace. We don't need that anymore. Let them live happily. Let's not bring some tension up, because that gave me some tension. But anyway, apart from that, I loved everything about that short story. It was brilliant. I loved seeing how the relationships have progressed. Clary and Alec being really good friends. Alec working on the Shadowhunter Downwelder alliance. Magnus being happy with kids. Simon and Clary being parabatai. Oh, also the epilogue for Lady Midnight. Annabelle awakening. They did all this to stop her from waking up and she's awoken anyway. So yeah, she's gonna kick some ass in the next book, isn't she? Cause a lot of trouble. Excited and nervous. So anyway, that is all I can think of to say right now about Lady Midnight. There is so much to discuss in this book, you guys. Like, honestly, I don't have time to discuss everything that I want to. But I have to stop myself talking now because this video is already going on way longer than I expected it to. So let me know all of your thoughts about Lady Midnight. Was it everything you expected it to be? What did you love the most? Was there anything that disappointed you? I hope not. But anyway, let me know all the Lady Midnight related things in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye!